Good morning, ladies. Happy Wednesday. I hope this message finds you well. It was an early morning, got quite a few things done, but I had to beat the house. I had to leave the house to beat the traffic because, like I said, traffic where I live is insane. So I came to the office, and before I start cleaning up and getting ready for training and all of that good stuff, we are going to do our Bible study. It definitely sets the tone for the day. If you don't think that it does, trust me, it does. If you don't think that it blocks off all type of attacks that are around you, I assure you it does. The amount of movement and change that my company has had since I've been here, and the amount of prayers and the answered prayers in terms of closed doors, getting rid of, unfortunately, people that were so mean and so rude and dangled people's livelihoods and things like that. Like, it is a people first culture, and I love it. So prayer, Bible study, being the light wherever you go makes a difference. However, we are on Leviticus chapter 14 and 15 is what we'll be going through today. And wherever the message may find you, I hope that the Lord speaks to you, and we're going to be getting, Lord forgive me, we're going to be getting through the specifics, and then we'll be getting to the more story part of the stuff, because I know I even can get lost in translation. It's like, whoa, Lord, someone had to write this whole entire time, every piece of commandment that you gave. It's just crazy, because I can barely remember what I did 2 days ago. So I will get there in Jesus' name. However, Leviticus chapter 14 verse 1 goes like this. Then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, This shall be the law of the leper for the day of his cleansing. He shall be brought to the priest, and the priest shall go out of the camp. And the priest shall examine him, and indeed, if the leprosy is healed in the leper, then the priest shall command to take for him who is to be cleansed 2 living and clean birds, cedar wood, scarlet, and hyssop. And the priest shall command that one of the birds be killed in an earthen vessel for running water. As for the living bird, he shall take it, the cedar wood, and the scarlet, and the hyssop, and dip them and the living bird in the blood of the bird that was killed over the running water. And he shall verse 7, and he shall sprinkle it 7 times on him who is to be cleansed from the leprosy, and shall pronounce him clean, and shall be let living bird loose in the open field. He who is to be cleansed shall wash his clothes, shave off all his hair, and wash himself in water, that he may be clean. After that he shall come into the camp, and he shall stay outside his tent 7 days. But on the 7th day he shall shave all the hair off his head, and his beard, and his eyebrows. All his hair he shall shave off. He shall wash his clothes, and wash his body in water, and he shall be clean. Verse 10, And on the 8th day he shall take 2 male lambs without blemish, 1 ewe of lamb of the first year without blemish, 3/10 of an ephah of fine flour mixed with an oil as a grain offering, and 1 log of oil. Then the priest who makes him clean shall present the man who is to be made clean and those things before the Lord at the door of the tabernacle of meeting. Verse 12, And the priest shall take 1 male lamb and offer it as a trespass offering, and the log of oil, and wave them as a wave offering before the Lord. Then he shall kill the lamb in the place where he kills the sin offering and the burnt offering in a holy place. For as the sin offering is the priest's, so is the trespass offering. It is most holy. Verse 14, The priest shall take some of the blood of the trespass offering. The priest shall put it on the tip of the right ear of him who is to be cleansed, on the thumb of his right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot. And the priest shall take some of the log of oil and pour it into the palm of his own left hand. Then the priest shall dip his right finger in the oil that is in his left hand, and shall sprinkle some of the oil with his finger 7 times before the Lord. And the rest of the oil in his hand, the priest shall put some on the tip of the right ear of him who is to be cleansed, on the thumb of his right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot, on the blood of the trespass offering. The rest of the oil that is in the priest's hand he shall put on the head of him who is to be cleansed. So the priest shall make atonement for him before the Lord. Then the priest shall offer the sin offering and make atonement for him who is to be cleansed from his uncleanness. Afterward he shall kill the burnt offering. Verse 20, And the priest shall offer the burnt offering and the grain offering on the altar, so the priest shall make atonement for him, and he shall be clean. But if he is poor and cannot afford it, then he shall take one male lamb as a trespass offering to be waved to make atonement for him, 1/10 of an ephah of fine flour mixed with oil as a grain offering, a log of oil. Verse 22, and the 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons, such as he is able to afford, one shall be a sin offering and the other a burnt offering. He shall bring them to the priest on the 8th day for his cleansing, to the door of the tabernacle of meeting before the Lord. Verse 24, and the priest shall take the lamb of the trespass offering and the log of the oil, and the priest shall wave them as a wave offering before the Lord. Then he shall kill the lamb of the trespass offering, and the priest shall take some of the blood of the trespass offering and put it on the tip of the right ear of him who is to be cleansed, on the thumb of his right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot. Verse 26, and the priest shall pour some of the oil into the palm of his own left hand. Then the priest shall sprinkle with his right finger some of the oil that is in his left hand 7 times before the Lord. And the priest shall put some of the oil that is in his hand on the tip of the right ear of him who is to be cleansed, on the thumb of the right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot, on the place of the blood of the trespass offering. Verse 29, the rest of the oil that is in the priest's hand he shall put on the head of him who is to be cleansed, to make atonement for him before the Lord. And he shall offer one of the turtle doves or young pigeons, such as he can afford, such as he's able to afford, the one as a sin offering and the other as a burnt offering with the grain offering. So the priest shall make atonement for him who is to be cleansed before the Lord. Verse 32, this is the law for one who had a leprous sore, who cannot afford the usual cleansing. And the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, when you have come into the land of Canaan, which I give you as a possession, and I put the leprous plague in a house in the land of your possession, and he who owns the house comes and tells the priest, saying, it seems to me that there is some plague in the house, then the priest shall command that they empty the house before the priest goes in to examine the plague, that all that is in the house may not be made unclean, and afterwards the priest shall go in to examine the house. Verse 37, and he shall examine the plague, and indeed if the plague is on the walls of the house with ingrained streaks, greenish or reddish, which appear to be deep in the wall, then the priest shall go out of the house to the door of the house and shut up the house 7 days. And the priest shall come again on the 7th day and look, and indeed if the plague has spread on the walls of the house, then the priest shall command that they take away the stones in which is the plague, and they shall cast them into an unclean place outside the city. Verse 41, and he shall cause the house to be scraped inside, all around, and the dust that they scrape off they shall pour out in an unclean place outside the city. Then they shall take other stones and put them in the place of those stones, and he shall take other mortar and plaster the house. Now if the plague comes back and breaks out in the house after he has taken away the stones, after he has scraped the house, after it is plastered, then the priest shall come and look. And indeed if the plague has spread in the house, it is an active leprosy in the house. It is unclean. Verse 45, and he shall break down the house, its stones and timber, and all the plaster of the house, and he shall carry them outside the city to an unclean place. Moreover, if he who goes into the house at all while it is shut up shall be unclean until evening. And he who lies down in the house shall wash his clothes, and he who eats in the house shall wash his clothes. But if the priest comes in and examines it, and indeed the plague has not spread in the house after the house was plastered, then the priest shall pronounce the house clean, because the plague is healed. And he shall take to cleanse the house 2 birds, cedar wood, scarlet, and hyssop. Verse 50, then he shall kill one of the birds in an earthen vessel over running water. And he shall take the cedar wood, the hyssop, the scarlet, and the living bird, and dip them in the blood of the slain bird and in the running water, and sprinkle the house 7 times. And he shall cleanse the house with blood of the bird, and with the running water, and the living bird, with the cedar wood, the hyssop, and the scarlet. Then he shall let the living bird loose outside the city in the open field, and make atonement for the house, and it shall be clean. Verse 54, this is the law for any leprous sore and scale, for the leprosy of a garment and of a house, for a swelling and a scab and a bright spot to teach when it is unclean and when it is clean. This is the law of leprosy. And now we are on Leviticus chapter 15, verse 1. And the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, speak to the children of Israel, and say to them, when any man has a discharge from his body, his discharge is unclean, and this shall be his uncleanness in regard to his discharge, whether his body runs with his discharge or his body is stopped up by his discharge, it is uncleanliness. Verse 4, every bed is unclean on which he who has the discharge lies, and everything on which he sits shall be unclean. And whoever touches his bed shall wash his clothes and bathe in the water and be unclean until evening. He who sits on anything on which he who has the discharge sat shall wash his clothes and bathe in water and be unclean until evening. And he who touches the body of him who has the discharge shall wash his clothes and bathe in the water and be unclean until evening. If he who has the discharge spits on him who is clean, then he shall wash his clothes and bathe in water and be unclean until evening. Verse 9, and any saddle on which he who has a discharge rides shall be unclean. Whoever touches anything that was under him shall be unclean until the evening. He who carries any of those things shall wash his clothes and bathe in the water and be unclean until the evening. And whomever the one who has a discharge clothes and has not rinsed his hands in water, he shall wash his clothes and bathe in water and be unclean until the evening. The vessel of the earth that he who has the discharge touches shall be broken, and every vessel of the wood shall be rinsed in water. Verse 13, and when he who has a discharge is cleansed of his discharge, then he shall count for himself 7 days for his cleansing, wash his clothes, and bathe his body in running water, and then he shall be clean. Verse 14, on the 8th day he shall take for himself 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons, and come before the Lord to the door of the tabernacle of meeting, and give them to the priest. Then the priest shall offer them, the one as a sin offering and the other as a burnt offering. So the priest shall make atonement for him before the Lord because of his discharge. If any man has an emission of semen, then he shall wash all his body in water, and be unclean until evening. And any garment and any leather on which there is semen, it shall be washed with water and be unclean until evening. Also, when a woman lies with a man and there is emission of semen, they shall bathe in water and be unclean until evening. Verse 19, if a woman has a discharge, and the discharge from her body is blood, she shall be set apart 7 days, and whoever touches her shall be unclean until the evening. And everything that she lies on during her impurity shall be unclean. Also everything that she sits on shall be unclean. And whoever touches her bed shall wash his clothes and bathe in water and be unclean until evening. And whoever touches anything that she sat on shall wash his clothes and bathe in water and be unclean until evening. Verse 23, if anything is on her bed or on anything on which she sits, when he touches it, he shall be unclean until evening. And if any man lies with her at all, so that her impurity is on him, he shall be unclean 7 days, and every bed on which he lies shall be unclean. If a woman has a discharge of blood for many days, other than at the time of her customary impurity, or if it runs beyond her usual time of impurity, all the days of her unclean discharge shall be as the days of her customary impurity. She shall be unclean. Verse 26, and every bed on which she lies all the days of her discharge shall be to her as the bed of her impurity, and whatever she sits on shall be unclean, as the uncleanness of her impurity. Whoever touches those things shall be unclean, and he shall wash his clothes, and bathe in water, and be unclean until evening. Verse 28, but if she is cleansed of her discharge, and then she shall count for herself 7 days, and after that she shall be clean. And on the 8th day she shall take for herself 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons, and bring them to the priest to the door of the tabernacle of meeting. Then the priest shall offer the one as a sin offering and the other as a burnt offering. The priest shall make atonement for her before the Lord for the discharge of her uncleanliness. Verse 31, thus you shall separate the children of Israel from their uncleanliness, lest they die in their uncleanliness when they defile my tabernacle that is among them. This is the law for one who has a discharge, and for him who emits semen and is unclean thereby, and for her who is indisposed because of her customary impurity, quote-unquote, period, and for who has a discharge, either man or woman, and for him who lies with her who is unclean. And that is all for today's Bible study, ladies. I hope let it sink in. That's a lot. Like, some of us, like including myself, I don't even feel like I want to wash a dish sometimes. And these people had to go through like all this uncleanliness, all of these sacrificing birds and putting together grain. We really have to, I mean, compared to what they had to do, I think we really have it easy. So just think about that today. If you think you're having it hard, think about it back then. Let's be honest. And I'm sure they didn't have pads back then when you had a period. So just think about it. Put things in perspective. Let's have a positive day. All right, let's have a positive day, because life's too short to be like, this girl's been through it, but life is still too short not to smile and not to be happy. It's the one thing you can control. And if you do that, the most powerful thing in the freaking world, girl, I'm telling you, there's nothing you can't do, and he got you. So be blessed. Talk to y'all soon. Bye.